The final game of the week, Assassin's Creed 3, is the last Assassin's Creed game in my collection that I own for now, and I'm going to get into details of what I might do in the future with the series and stuff like that. But I have to start with the bullshit of this game first. Oh, and of course I have to start with a nice big fuck you to the YouTube auditor. Now, I said this earlier in the Goodbye PlayStation 3 series, but in almost all trilogy games, the second game is usually the best one. That would be Assassin's Creed 2 in this case, and the third and final game is usually a letdown. Now, with Assassin's Creed, how do you define the third game? Is it Brotherhood, which was essentially the third game, but it's also a spin-off in the trilogy? If so, it still wasn't better than Assassin's Creed 2. Is Revelations the third game? If so, that was the shittiest version of the Ezio trilogy. And then you have Assassin's Creed 3, which really isn't the third game, but it's the third numbered game. And if this is considered the end of a trilogy, this game was also a big fucking letdown. I think the definition of the word trilogy was really fucked over badly, right? Anyways, Assassin's Creed 3 is the conclusion to the Desmond 2012 storyline. And we get a new hero this time around. Seems every new numbered game, we're going to be getting a new hero. But in the meantime, I've made my feelings known about the two Ezio spin-offs. Assassin's Creed 3 is the culmination of all the prior games. And had you skipped Brotherhood and Revelations, you would probably be wondering how the fuck did these people get to New York. Shit, even playing the game, you're wondering why these motherfuckers end up in Brazil. Yes, Brazil. Hey, the world's ending. Let's go to Brazil of all places for an energy source. The land of fine asses and thongs, stricken with poverty, but they have an energy source. Whatever. You know, it's supposed to show that Desmond has assimilated all these assassin abilities from his ancestors. You know, just sitting in a damn computer all day long. You know, who knows? Maybe this Oculus Rift and this Project Morpheus shit rolls out. We can all play the damn games and become a fucking sniper or something. Hey, who the fuck knows? Because that's exactly what the Assassin's Creed plot has been. Sit in a computer all day long, and poof, you're an assassin. Now, in any event, Desmond's story ties up the whole end-of-the-world solar flare crap from these godlike motherfuckers. Whatever, man. You know, they're so fucking godlike, they put shit in caves to hide it from the rest of human beings. So at the end of the game, you get to the conclusion of Desmond saving the world. Does it make sense? Of course not. This is what I mentioned a few videos ago about this shit feeling like the show Lost. They put together an idea, they had no way of explaining the full ramifications of that idea. Desmond saves the day, and his mind, or thoughts, or soul, or whatever the fuck, they end up in the cloud, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later in the video. Now, as for the historic assassin, we get a new assassin, Connor. I'm not even going to pronounce his birth name. Holy shit, no offense, because I'm sure that shit means something, but I'm not even going to try and pronounce it and butcher that shit up. So, we'll just call him Connor, because the motherfucker wanted to act like your typical American to blend in up in this bitch. Yeah, because if we've seen in all these Assassins games, some dude in a white hood and an outfit with swords and arrows and a fucking feather in his cap can totally blend the fucking... You know, between Altair's whitish silvery robes blending in and all the beige colors that they had at that time and Ezio's hooded look blending in during the Renaissance, it makes you wonder how the fuck do people not notice these guys were goddamn assassins then? But for Connor himself, he's boring. I mean, there's no nice way of saying this, and the developers said they wanted it to be a stoic version of a famous Native American chief and shit like that, but essentially, he's boring. He whines when things don't go his way. He shows no emotion other than resent and contrite. He's like the original emo motherfucker in US history. No, really, compared to Ezio, who had charm and personality, this motherfucker's boring. It's like Altair all over again, who was also boring. You went from an assassin with swag to a raging fucking emo. But anyway, the game throws you for a loop right off the bat, and you start the game as a Templar without even realizing. You play as Connor's father, Haytham Kenway, for the start of the game, until they show you he's really a Templar. He then decides to go half-seas on a bastard with a Native American woman, and out pops out Connor. Story progresses. Connor learns how to hunt and shit as Native Americans. One thing leads to another, and all of a sudden he becomes the assassin. Now that leads to the first whole fucking 5 chapters of the game. That little summary covers the first 5 chapters of the game. He then thrusts himself into countless historic events right before and during the American Revolutionary War, and the climax is his standoff with his dad, Haytham. Haytham wants him to join the Templar cause. Connor wants to stop the Templars. Think of it like Star Wars with Darth Vader coaxing Luke to the dark side. Haytham doesn't succeed in persuading Connor. Connor stops the Templars, kills Haytham in the process, kills General Lee, who attacked the village that led to the death of his mother, takes the key to the temple, hides it in the grave, which is what Desmond used later to save the end of the world. Hooray! That's the end of the fucking story for Assassin's Creed. Now, here's the deal, man. I'm not even going to get into the historical inaccuracies of the shit because obviously I could spend a week going through all the historical shit in this game that they got wrong. We just have to accept they used historical elements and they needed some literary leniency to make the story progress. But I will say this, at least half of this game is so inaccurate, it's embarrassing. You know, it's almost insulting when you really look at it. You know, considering how well records were kept from at least this time period during the Revolutionary War, compared to the Renaissance, and obviously compared to the Third Crusade, which was almost 2,000 years ago, it's quite fucking awful to see how historically inaccurate this shit really is. But again, I'm not going to get into all the details of it. We'll just say that they didn't do a very good job of keeping true to actual history up in this motherfucker. Now, as for the gameplay itself, the game added hunting in the wilderness, which was a big set piece that they wanted for a while. The developers have actually been very open about this, but they were very nervous doing this because a few years prior, Red Dead Redemption did these exact same ideas. They added hunting in the wilderness. We go after bears and coyotes and wolves. I don't remember that game. So when they decided they were going to add hunting, they knew that it had to be done right to compete with Red Dead Redemption. Now, for the most part, hunting in the game provided a side quest. It wasn't all that critical to the game, only in the early chapters where you had to do the main tutorials and shit like that. But for the most part, it was just there in case you wanted to do it. You didn't have to do it other than those basic tutorial missions, but they at least added something new to the series. Now, speaking of the beginning of the game, one of the biggest knocks on this game was the slow start to this game, which, to be honest, was pretty fucking slow. I mean, I summarized that whole fucking, first 5 chapters in like 30 seconds, but it took about 10 hours to get through those first chapters. But here's the problem. I don't see any other way of getting around that when you look at the story that they tried to portray. You know, if you look back to Assassin's Creed 2, the start of it was also pretty slow because the opening had to show Ezio's motivation to being an assassin. By parts 2 and 3, you already knew why he's an assassin. Basically, you needed the plot to hit you within the first 2 chapters so you didn't get bored with this motherfucker. But we knew in Brotherhood and Revelations, Ezio was a badass motherfucking assassin. He was the master assassin. So you just needed to get down to business and start fucking people up. But here, part of the opening game is establishing the storyline of Hatham's journey to the United States, him busting a nut and having a child. And that's exactly what happened. And then the child growing up and learning his Native American roots and setting the stage for why he wanted to be an assassin. So yes, the shit was slow, but there is no way in hell they can tell that narrative in any other way. Even if they tried flashbacks or whatever, you still lose the element of surprise with Hatham. I don't like that the beginning of the game was so slow, but at the same time, I don't see any other way of starting this story out differently. So I accept that in the fact that they needed to tell the story of how Connor and Hatham's relationship began. I mean, it's fair criticism to levy towards the game, but because there really isn't any other way to portray that portion of the story. Now, the rest of the game feels like any other Assassin's Creed game. There are missions that progress, the story, the side missions that kill time and shit like that, historic places to visit, all the climbing that you need to do, and somehow the assassins end up in every fucking historical event possible. I don't know how the fuck that shit happens. You also have the recruitment of people to help you in battle. Except this time, now they actually have a skill like starting a riot or arresting Connor to make it look like he's a prisoner. So it's not just calling in your assassins so they can kill everybody. No, they actually have some purpose in this where they actually have some kind of power or ability that helps Connor towards completing his goals. They also added naval battles and whatnot, which personally I thought was annoying as fuck. Between the actual gameplay of it and the storyline issue. I mean, think about it. This fucking guy just learned how to be an assassin, so that qualifies him to be a naval commander? I mean, motherfucker, this ain't the kids game. You sank my battleship and shit. You need years of experience to sail these massive ships and strategize how you plan on sinking a ship that's also trying to sink you. This guy picks it up within the first time he's on board of this motherfucker. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm sure all the deckhands who make a living on the boat want some noob commanding their attacks. Now, obviously, the mechanics of what they started in this game is what carried over to Black Flag. But to me, it was utterly fucking ridiculous that we had these naval battles with Connor, of all people, leading the naval battles. You know, it's not like Ezio, who's a master assassin. This guy was just starting out, and he's winning fucking naval wars, man. Get out of here with that bullshit. But in any event, with a different setting, different time period, different main character, the game still feels the same. You know, I hadn't played an Assassin's Creed game in over a year before Revelations. I told you guys that story yesterday where it took me 14 months to play that motherfucker. But just 3 months later, I was playing this. Essentially, they still felt similar. You know, they almost feel identical, yet neither had anything to do with one another. You know, sure, there's some differences, but essentially, Assassin's Creed is starting to feel like Call of Duty to me. It's fun for a while, but it's all starting to blend into each other where you can't tell the difference between them. And for that reason, along with the console generation switch, is why I never got into Black Flags. You know, after Desmond's story ends and something is uploaded or linked to the cloud or whatever the fuck this shit was, I really didn't see a reason to return to this motherfucker. I just wanted to see what the end of the world crap was. They resolved it. Fine, I'm okay with that shit. At least they stopped the 2012 bullshit, but I'm getting tired of the game. So why should I continue, and why would I go out and buy another one? So I didn't. I left it. I haven't bought Black Flags yet. Considering every single game in the series I delayed playing, why would I go out and get that motherfucker right away? And you know what? The reviews have already said Black Flags was a pretty damn good game and added a bit more personality to the series, but if anything, I can do what I did with Revelations in waiting to buy it until I actually feel like playing. You know, when the game released and PlayStation 4 was right around the corner, I made the decision that I'm no longer going to be buying PlayStation 3 games that can be purchased on a next-gen console. So if any game releases on PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, I'm going to go after the PlayStation 4 version. You know, the only two games that I finished buying after PlayStation 4 came out were games that you can't find on that console as of yet. So for the most part, if I do get Black Flags, it's going to be for the next-gen console when I actually get my PlayStation 4 up in this motherfucker. And logically, it sort of makes sense, because if I wanted to go out and buy my PlayStation 4 right now, technically, I need a game to play. I mean, what's it gonna do? It's just gonna sit there and collect dust? Obviously, I don't have a PlayStation 4, so if I wanted, I could go out and buy the console, and I could probably get Black Flags along with it to hold me off until all the games start coming out for this motherfucker. Although, I will say, Unity looks pretty good. You know, I'm not exactly sold on the game yet. The game just seems like it's going to repeat and rehash all the same elements over and over and over again. But I will say that co-op portion does look fairly interesting. But essentially, I'm sort of bored with the series. You know, it's sort of like Call of Duty. Until Unity showed off some co-op, which is something I'd really like to see more in the future of in this game, I'm losing interest in this series. It's not that it's a bad series, it's that it feels the same. It feels stale. Once the Desmond storyline completed, I felt satisfied with how much I played this game. I don't see too many things that they can add that'll make me feel any less bored, but I'm not going to rule out buying future Assassin's Creed games. I'm sure they might release something pretty decent. I'm sure they're going to release something that actually changes the series or whatever the fuck it is. But I'll hold off until then, because for the most part, this is kind of getting boring. You know, it's not the same where I'm like, okay, I'm never buying a Treyarch or Bethesda product. But I do need to see something that makes me want to go back to the series and makes it feel like it's something new and fresh again. But anyways, that does it for Assassin's Creed Week. So as always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit. And I'll see you guys in the next video.